Well, hello there.
Welcome to a new week, a new season.
Well, no, I mean, it's what, like it's May, probably.
It's gonna be May.
It is May, I think, when this comes out.
May the 4th be with you. 4th.
Oh, God, you could tell we're recording at 10:22 p.m.
God, we are old.
I know.
I am still a night owl when it comes to it. I am not a morning person.
Same.
I hate the morning, but the nighttime, like, I think I'm just, like, so ingrained to going to bed early because I have to get up early during the week that just, like, for the weekend, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
And Remy gets me up, my dog. He gets me up every single morning 5 minutes before my alarm.
Oh, jeez.
And I have to get up at 6.
Ugh.
Yeah. And he does that on the weekend, too.
No.
And I'm like, I just
at
5:55? Yeah.
Jeez.
He just starts getting, like, antsy. But I'm like,
Yikes.
bruh. This morning, though, they were actually pretty tired. So I got to sleep in till almost 7. But
That's so funny. My dogs will literally just, like, be sleeping when we wake up.
no, they're up and ready to go.
But also, since we have doggy doors, I think it kind of helps because they can just kind of, like, they're always in the middle of the night, they're running around. I'm just like, I don't care. So.
No, I thought about doing a doggy door, but then I know Ruby would be smart enough to figure out how to get out.
For sure. I don't think it works well with cats.
Yeah, so I'm like, probably not.
Awesome, well. I just had a yawn, but we're good.
Sorry, I had to check something. Okay. I'm just going crazy.
Okay.
But, so this week, last time I was here, you're probably not going to have no idea, but the water bottle that I brought is related to what I'm talking about today.
Is it a national park of some sort?
Yes. Wow, you remembered that?
It's not Yosemite.
I'm surprised that you remembered that I brought a national park water bottle.
I don't know. I noticed those things.
That blows my mind.
I don't know which one it is, but
I'm just going to hop right in because I really thought you were not going to know.
Did I get points for that?
Yeah, I give you kudo points.
Yeah.
So let's just time on in. I have another series that we're opening with. National Park series.
I love it.
I love national parks, so I'm like, why not cover them?
Yeah.
Because
you don't think about the history.
Yeah, there's so much rich history about them. But yeah, and I thought a lot about what I wanted to do this week, and I was kind of bouncing around like different ideas, and then I just follow some stuff on like Instagram and whatnot, and then at my work I have my calendar. Like, I have a little small calendar. It's a national park one, and every month is like a different national park here in the US. And I was like, that would be a great series to do because national parks are super awesome. And it hits really close to me because it is one of my favorite hobbies to do. Mm-hmm. Like, whenever I still haven't been to Rocky Mountain National Park.
Oh, geez.
And I've lived here my whole life. Like, I'm sure, like, my mom said that we have been through it. And I'm like, I don't remember it, so it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So that's, like, on my bucket list, like, this summer or something, is to go there.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But, so there's so many, there's 63 national parks here in the U.S. Oh. So that leaves us a lot to cover in a series.
I did not know there was that many.
There is a lot. Well, because like Utah alone has like 5. And then here we have 3.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Because we have Rocky Mountain National Park. We have the sand dunes. And then we have the Black Canyon of the Gunnison.
Oh, yeah. I've been to the sand dunes. Mm-hmm. I've been to the other 2.
Yeah. So the other one I want to go to and mark that off my list, but that's about like a 5-hour drive from here. So that would have to be like a long weekend one. It looks gorgeous though, but I've been to all the ones in Utah. those are awesome. I can't wait to cover Zion one day. So it's not Zion.
Okay.
I love Zion. It's my favorite by far. So other than the other one I'm going to talk about next week. So,
oh,
yeah.
What's this week?
I'm covering too. So this week I am starting with the national park. So I decided, why not cover the first one, Yellowstone National Park.
Oh.
It is the first national park here in the U.S.
Okay. What a classic.
Yeah, it is very classic. I love it. It's beautiful. It's a very beautiful park. I loved it. You have a very blank face.
Because I think I've been there, but I don't remember. I cannot think right now.
So jumping right on in, I want to share where I got my sources. So I wanted to be as descriptive as I can for the history of Yellowstone, but there's so much to its history. I can make a whole series out of Yellowstone and its stories and its craziness and just...
There's a whole show on it.
Yeah, like there could be so much. So I try to cover what I could just to give you a foundation of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Go watch the show Yellowstone if you want more. Just it's not even about it.
Honestly, I could do a whole episode of just stupid things people have done in this park.
Ooh,
it's crazy. There's so many stupid people. It blows my mind. I hope you know I am very biased when it comes to the protection of national parks and just like people, I guess ranchers. But I am a huge advocate for like protecting national parks and just nature in general when it comes to that.
Hell yeah.
So I'm like, any chance that we can not build
right.
buildings and stuff, I'm for it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Keep nature. Okay. So this history goes back thousands of years. So I'm going to cover as much as I can, but I got information from the Yellowstone National Park website, just the NPR.org, YellowstoneLodges.com, and also just the National Park Service website as well. So let's start from the top. Yellowstone National Park has been there it got its name from the U.S. government. We can track it back. So just like the tracking of people being there is about more than 10,000 years. So people have been in the area for over 10,000 years. And the park has been was occupied, but then slowly pushed out. But it has very unique features in it. So this region is part of the Great Plains, the Great Basin, and the Columbia Plateau area. So the Yellowstone area region, because it's so vast, it's massive.
Yeah.
It was used for resources of fishing, hunting, gathering of plants, and even the thermal waters that are there were used for medicinal and religious use from the tribes that were there. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. It's so cool. So those who inhabited the vast amount of land were a lot of tribes in the western part of the country. I'm not even going to name them because there's so freaking many. It's just a simple search to look them up. But the National Park Service in their research discovered and confirmed that there were over 27 tribes located in this region at one point. So that's why I'm not labeling them.
Yeah.
Because there are 27 of them.
Right. They're all important, but that's a long list.
Exactly. I highly recommend you look up those tribes and get a little bit more knowledge of them because they are just as important because they protected that land for as long as they could.
Yeah.
I give them props for that.
Absolutely.
So for generations, tribes would use this land between their everyday life and they called it home. This started to change, of course, around the 1800s when the westward expansion was in full gear.
As it is.
Of course. So a fellow couple that we all mostly know here in the States changed the course of touching a piece of Yellowstone, and that was Lewis and Clark. So
classic.
They actually did not hit directly any of the area of Yellowstone. They kind of hit the borders of it. They knew an idea of it when they were going towards I think it was Oregon or something.
Yeah.
Again, I am not an American history
The Oregon Trail
buff. I don't really care about U.S. history. I press on.
I only know a lot because I had to teach it. Literally taught westward expansion.
It's a lot. Between the gold rush and just discovery of invading.
And I hate that era too.
It's honestly the only enjoying part about the 1800s is the Civil War and Billy the Kid.
Yes.
Any of the outlaws.
True.
All
the outlaws are fun.
Wild West.
Wild, wild west.
So on their discovery expedition to explore the westward of the United States, not even United States really at this point. Well, actually it was, but whatever. So briefly, the two in their group would see the outskirts part of what's now the park. So among the group was a man by the name of John Coulter. Coulter, along the expedition with Lewis and Clark, was intrigued with this part of Montana that they hit briefly. That is kind of by the Yellowstone area, and he wanted to go back. So once they made like their era, Sacagawea was like deuces, whatever. I don't know what happened, but John Coulter was like, I like that one area that was kind of pretty and kind of unique. Like I kind of want to explore more of that, which was now like parts of Montana. He was like, I'm going to go back. I want to go back. So in 1806, he set out on an expedition on his own with some other people to explore more of this mysterious area. He was like, I must know more.
I forgot Montana existed.
He would join a group of fur trappers that were trading in this region. Fur trappers were huge at this point.
All the rage.
Oh, yeah. Next week, I'm going way into them. Not really, but kind of.
Interesting.
They're interesting. So the men he tagged along with were mountain men that had the skills of survival in the vast wilderness, trapping animals, and exploring the area. So he kind of just like ran into these like wild men and he was like, hey, this area is pretty cool. Can you like tour me around? And they're like, okay, but you're going to do everything I tell you to.
Oh, jeez.
He's like, okay, this is dangerous.
Oh, my God.
So Coulter was intrigued to know more about the area. He was like, show me everything. And what he discovered was more than he thought. Like, they actually took him away from the area that he was and took him further into what is now Yellowstone. And he's like, holy shit, what is this place? It's like, this is gorgeous. So Coulter would go on to discover new wildlife that was unfamiliar. He wrote about beautiful canyons and wonders that made the area so unique. He told stories about bubbling waters, multicolored hot springs, and geysers that blew water hundreds of feet in the air. If this was like back in the 1800s and someone was spewing this to you, would you believe them?
No, I'd be like, okay, you're having weird dreams.
Exactly. Like, you would never think, like, when you go to this park, you're like, this is fucking real, which is wild.
Yeah.
It is. It's
just
so
the geysers
cool.
alone.
Exactly. It's what I did not care much for Old Faithful, to be honest.
Yeah, I've heard that one's not the best.
I mean, it's cool, but there's so many other cool like things to see in the park that we spent more of our time going through. Like, we literally like stood and saw Old Faithful for like 5 minutes, and then we moved along. We're like, we're done. We were more interested in like the bison that were just in the middle of the parking lot.
That's great.
They literally walk everywhere. They don't give a fuck.
They're like, hey, what's up? This is my land, bitch.
I love it. So in today's standards of what we know now is that Coulter was talking about the hydrothermal features of the hot springs, massive waterfalls that they have there. The waterfalls are magnificent, and the wildlife that piqued interest that was unfamiliar. So a lot of just different animals. There are a lot of different species in this park. And there's too many for me to really recount, so I will only do a few.
Squirrels?
Yes. Yes. So one that is probably the most famous is the wandering bison.
Of course.
They are literally everywhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they just hang out in the middle of the road. Some walk independently, some walk in herds.
Oh.
There was a couple that were hanging out by the hydrothermal, like hot springs or whatever. They just chill.
Nice. I love that.
Do not approach them.
Did you see people doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
they're fucking
gross.
idiots. They deserve what they get.
Yeah.
I don't care. So I can list the endless amounts of animals. So the first one was, of course, the bison. There's bighorn sheep, which we actually saw. They always walk in herds. And we saw them twice, which is surprising.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the first day they kind of like scattered across like the road in front of us. And then the second day when we were driving through, they were literally on the side of a cliff. Because that's what they do. Yeah. They were like on these little tiny rocks, just like kicking stuff.
They love a cliff.
Oh, they love them. But one of them actually has, how they keep track of them is one of them has this ginormous collar on its neck. And it's a tracker to keep to keep tabs on them, to like figure out where they're migrating to, like how the population, like that's how they keep tabs on them. And they do that for some of the other bison or just some of the other animals in the area. They'll tag them or they'll put those trackers on there to kind of know more about where they're locating, where they prefer to be and whatnot. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they actually do something, the rangers.
I would want to just watch like if there's a camera in it, I would just want to watch their like point of view. Don't go in for the car. No, don't jump off the cliff.
So there's also elk. We saw massive elk. There's deer. And I'm pretty sure I saw a wolf or a coyote. Wolves are definitely in the area. I'll talk briefly on them, but they definitely are there in the park. There's grizzlies and black bears. We saw 2 grizzlies that, they started down by the lake. And then when we came back another day, they were moved further up, and like rangers were there all day, like camped out pretty much, just making sure that people weren't being fucking stupid and getting too close.
Right.
Cause like they're grizzlies.
Yeah.
Like they're not Kodiak grizzlies like in Alaska, but they're still freaking huge animals that
don't mess with them.
That will kill you.
Leave wildlife alone.
Yeah, but they were so beautiful. Oh my God. We kept at a safe distance, but oh my God.
Yeah.
They're beautiful creatures. I have an obsession with black bears. I love black bears.
I love bears.
I do too. They're gorgeous.
My mom's obsessed. We saw one on a hike and she kept getting closer and I was like, stop it. She's like, I gotta get a picture.
Run the other way.
Yeah, it was like a mom and her cub. I'm like, you don't mess with that shit.
No, you go the other way because they will attack.
Yeah.
So there's also a lot of varieties of birds. Bald eagle is one of them.
Aww.
Mm-hmm. And the squirrels, of course. But of course, there's other like insects. There's some reptiles of some sort, and then definitely a variety of just like the birds and stuff. So just like average animals, quote unquote. But
groundhog.
Yeah, I think they do have groundhogs and moose.
I love groundhogs. Moose
are there too.
Aw, love moose.
I've seen some gorgeous moose up by Breckenridge.
I saw a video of a moose yesterday, actually. A moose walked into a hospital in Alaska because it saw a fake plant and it was wanting to eat it. So it was just eating this fake plant and they're all just like gathered around it so that like you don't want to mess with a moose.
Yeah.
But they were trying to get him to like just go out the door.
Yeah.
And so they just like went around him and he eventually was just like and just walked out the door.
I don't think people realize how big moose are.
Yeah.
We ran into one. We were up in Woodland Park. And we were doing, we're just taking a drive through one of the back roads that takes you down to Monument.
Yeah.
And there was a young female moose. She was like on her own and whatnot. James was going crazy. He was so excited. He was like, take my picture, take my picture. Like we were just like, we had the truck parked. And we were just sitting there, and she got so close, but we did not dare try to do anything because we were like, we don't want to spook her and have her just start freaking out and stuff. So we kind of just stayed put to have her just go on her own, to just do her own thing. Mm-hmm. But she got super close to like the window because she was curious, and we're like, don't fucking do anything. And James was so excited. He was like, oh my God, it's a freaking moose. It's so close.
Cool. Came up to the window.
Yeah. But like, as soon as like he turned the car on, she was just out. She was out of there. Aww. And we're like, okay, good. That, because you don't want animals to not be afraid of you.
Right. That's
because true. That's what makes them more dangerous.
Yeah.
Because they can be erratic at any time, and it could also be harmful for them. So it's like, make sure that they stay scared of you.
I'm scared of mountain lions. I'm scared to come across one of those.
Oh my God. You won't even know. You'll just be dead.
Yeah. That's the thing. Once you see it, it's like, shit.
You're done. You're done.
I'm terrified of like seeing those on hikes.
Mm-hmm. And they do have them in the park as well. It's not as common. Like, they're going to be further up in the hills, so you're not going to really see them. But I mean, if you're hiking up there, it could happen. It can happen anywhere.
Yeah.
When you're up hiking and doing whatever. So it's just being cautious, wear a bell.
Yeah.
And carry spray with you. So I push forward. Okay. So Coulter found all of this new, like all of these crazy stuff that he was discovering. He was like, this is so freaking awesome. And he wrote about it all. He was like, he was writing down notes. He was just doing doodles, whatever. He was just like, this place is so freaking cool. Like, I have to tell people about it. So when he returned to Missouri, Coulter told stories and shared his writing. He was like, look at how cool this place is. Like, there's some really cool, like, colorful waters. Some were bubbling. You have these water spitting out in the air, and people were like, you're crazy.
You're on drugs, Brad.
Yeah, you're not. That's a little far-fetched. Nothing can be that cool. He's like, no, really, it's super cool. And they're like, you need to move on from your travels. I think you got hit in the head a little too hard. And he just gave up after that. He was like, there's really nothing more I can do except just share my findings.
Yeah.
So the Yellowstone region would be left as mythical until the 1850s, when a man by the name of Jim Bridger came into the picture. So Bridger was a guide and a topographer that knew of the Yellowstone region and was asked to guide W.F. Reynolds and Dr. Ferdinand in 1859. So pretty much he was approached and they were like, okay, so we're getting more information about this area and we want to know more. We're curious. Take us on this like tour. And he was like, okay, fine, whatever. The expedition did not go as planned due to weather conditions. They went at the wrong time. And other unforeseen problems that the expedition was not as successful as Coulter. So they didn't get further in like Coulter did.
Yeah.
They didn't get as far in. And they probably went around like the winter time or like the fall or spring, and they get pretty big snowfall too. So you just have to go at the peak season to really get that experience. So luckily, Bridger did see some of the wonders that Coulter was talking about. So he didn't see all of them, but he did see enough to be like, this is wild.
Yeah.
This is crazy. Like, Coulter was actually right. So Bridger would tell stories. So he would go back home and he would tell stories about the wildlife and the beautiful scenery of the region. But again, no one believed him. They were like, okay, you're just rambling off what he said. And you're trying to take credit of it. No one's going to believe you. And he's like, fuck you all.
I'm telling the truth.
I swear. It wasn't until 1863 that another explorer decided to give Yellowstone another go. He's like, okay, so let's introduce Walter W. DeLacy. So DeLacy, he was a civil engineer, surveyor, and a map maker. He's like, there's two people that have discussed this region and its wonders, and I want to make sure that it's true or not. He's like, I'm intrigued. I want to know this. Let's get to work. So the myth of Yellowstone piqued his interest, and he wanted to see if this place actually existed. So he was like, okay, let's get a party together and we're going to go travel to where they were talking about. So this time, DeLacy was a man who was prepared. Along with him, DeLacy had along with him prospector tools and survey equipment. So he was bringing all the big guns to get proof of this. So DeLacy and his group would go up along the Snake River, which comes important for next week, to find the Shoshone Lake and Lewis Lake. These are like the big lakes that are like in the middle of the park, technically. They're gorgeous, beautiful lakes, huge. They're very large. He would be around the lower Geyser Basin section of the park, and then he eventually veered off the path of Yellowstone. So he like kind of went to the center and then kind of just went whoop, out of the park. So DeLacy would go on more than just writing what he found. He would actually create the first map of the park.
Oh, wow.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, to know kind of everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm. And this was only like a first edition of the map. Like this map has grown tremendously over the next like 100, 200 years, like 150 years.
Yeah.
So this was only the beginning. Now his findings and stuff like that wouldn't be published until a few laters down after someone else came out with their publications. So after this other person I'm about to talk about, came up with their publications and just like what they found, that is when DeLacy then published what he found as well. And he's like, oh, we were here before you, but like, here's our findings to help prove that this place does exist.
Yeah.
So 1869 came around and explorers D.E. Folsom, William Peterson, and C.W. Cook would go on to venture into the park to see if all was true of what the other explorers of Yellowstone claimed. Yellowstone was getting a huge rep. People were just like, I want to try and find like if this place is real or not. Like the more people that can go to this place and get like confirmation of it, the more that it's going to get represented.
Right.
So they decided to go. So 36 days they explored the Yellowstone region. That's quite a long days to be walking around. They found that what all the previous people said were true. They're like, holy shit, like this is legit. Like there's a couple lakes. There's all of these like weird hydrothermals. There's this geyser. Like what the hell what is going on? So there were people and after they left to go to Helena, Montana, and they would tell people about what they discovered and the stories. And of course people were like, you're joking. But like this group, they were like, fuck no, we're going to make sure people know that this area exists. Like more people need to know about it. So instead of leaving their stories alone, they decided that their story about this area needed to be heard. The group would eventually have their findings published in the Western Monthly Magazine of Chicago. So they actually got their stuff published. Yes, published. So because of the publication, Yellowstone started to get more interest. People were like, okay, this actually exists.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. So a year later, General Henry D. Washburn and his party would go exploring Yellowstone. They're like, okay, it's our turn. And of course, it's just like a bunch of people that are like, I don't know, let's go do it.
Let's try it out.
So in their expedition, they would discover popular attractions of the park, including Old Faithful, the Castle Geyser, the Giant Geyser, and the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. These are huge attractions in the park. I don't know if we saw all of them. I'm trying to remember.
Can you like, how long does it take to see everything?
I would recommend, we were there for 5 days. But we also went, we spent like a day or so in, I think in the park itself, we spent 2 or 3 days.
Oh, okay.
I recommend doing a solid 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
If you want to see
everything.
That's crazy. And if you actually want to like go on like hikes and stuff like that. Because we went in October, like early October, so we couldn't really do that much hiking.
Yeah.
But then whenever we go again, I want to do some hiking. So definitely, like, for us, it would probably be another couple days. But for like people who haven't been, I would do like a solid 3 or 4 days.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's a huge park.
That's crazy.
It borders 3 states.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So in 1871, Yellowstone was gaining more attention that would leave the U.S. Geological Survey sponsors to travel to the region. They're like, okay, we got to know more about this. So including in this trip would be naturalists, geologists, and a landscape artist, and also a photographer. So they were bringing in the big guns to get this proof.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, we need to know, like, we want to see what this place actually looks like. And all other people around the United States want to know what this is looking like. So here is where we start to see proof other than stories about the beauty of Yellowstone. This expedition would cost around $40,000 at the time. So this was like in the 1800s.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Those on the trip were Dr. Ferdinand Hayden, he becomes important, James Stevenson, Albert Peel, William Jackson, and Thomas Moran. The trip was so successful that it caused attention all the way to Congress and eventually to the president. When brought to Congress and President Grant, it was discussed on how to protect this area as it was so unique. I mean, people see unique areas and they're like, let's exploit it.
Right.
So, of course, like, that's the one thing, like, with these presidents and national parks, like, they're, like, 100% like, we got to conserve this, like, protect it.
Yeah.
Which I'm for, which is probably the only thing I agree with, but... So, after heavy deliberation, President Grant made it clear that the area had to be protected and preserved to keep it as beautiful all who have seen it. So the conservation of the land needed to be set. So to establish the park that would be protected, President Grant would have a bill written up into law on March 1st, 1872, that Yellowstone Park would become a government-sanctioned park, making it the United States' first national park.
Wow. I always wondered how they just determined that.
Yeah, you have to write a bill about it. So with this newly established national park and the plan to make it available for all to see its glory, the government decided that roads needed to be mapped out throughout the park. It should be noted at this point that tribe members in this area were also being pushed out.
Of course.
Yeah.
Not surprised.
Go figure. So the U.S. Congress would agree to this construction, and in charge was Superintendent Philetus? Yeah, W. Norris. They would start by making a headquarters at Mammoth Hot Springs. This place is pretty legit. So this area is still standing to this day. It's a pretty cool looking area. It's like a mini town all put together. It's so cool. So there are inns, cabins, restaurants, and of course, shopping centers.
Yeah.
There is also a post office.
Oh.
Because it was literally a little town. It was the headquarters for the park. It is also close to the attraction of the Mammoth Hot Springs. These hot springs in this park are not like ones where you can go up in the mountains and drink a few glasses of wine as you relax in the springs. Yeah, these temperatures are so freaking hot that they are flesh melting temperatures.
Oh, so you can't go in them?
No.
Aw.
No. No, it is not something that you want to mess with.
Unless you want to boil to death. You
will. None of these hot springs here are ones that you can go in. So when you go to Yellowstone and you see a hot spring, that does not mean you get to relax and drink wine in them. You will die. Good Lord.
I feel like I wouldn't go in a hot spring unless it says you can go in a hot spring. Like, I'm not just going to go in a random hot spring.
There's some questionable people out there.
That's true.
So Mammoth Springs are unique as they are walkways. They're So with Mammoth Springs, it's very cool how it's set up. There's like walkways through them and how it's like set up. And I wouldn't say that they're like crystallized, but there's so much science into it that when I was reading it, I was like getting gloss-eyed because I was like, I don't fucking know what this means. But they're really cool to see because like they kind of like drip down and they're like crystallized. And they kind of look like the stalactites almost in a sense. Like they look like that.
Oh, wow.
They're super cool. And that's just like how they formed. And so when the snow melts from them, like water pours down them.
Yeah.
It's so legit.
That's
they're
awesome.
so freaking cool. But they're very hot, so don't touch them.
Touch them? Okay.
But yeah, the cool thing too is that like you get pretty close to them. But there's like a bunch of walkways to go through like around them and whatnot. It's pretty legit. Stay on the walkway. Bless
oh my
you.
God. See, I get that felt good. It's like we were talking about. That felt good. It's a good one.
So after creating the headquarters, the workers started to build the roads around the park. What is now the Grand Loop Road, it is pretty close to the original road system. There are a lot of different roads to take now to get around. So in the next coming years, you would expect the park to flourish. But as humans do, we destroy everything we touch. Mm-hmm. And that is what people started to do at the park. They even did this in the old days. What the fuck? So there were no rangers yet. There was no National Park Service. It did not exist. So the protection of the park, like there is now, people took advantage of it. Like there was no one there to like really tell you no or to like watch out.
There are rangers like everywhere, pretty much.
I mean, there's a good chunk of them now. The funding has been cut severely in the last few years.
But they're just walking around.
Yeah, they pretty much keep tabs, especially if there's like an animal sighting nearby. Yeah. They're always there. They didn't have that. They didn't have like someone to be like, stop fucking around or you're out. Like,
right.
People could do whatever they wanted, even though it was like technically still a national park. Mm-hmm. So that was a bad decision on their part for not having people prepared for that. So people started to vandalize the parks and the attractions, which is extremely dangerous and it ruins the nature of it and the beauty. So it even went as far as people poaching the unique animals that roam the land, which is highly illegal. Mm-hmm. So a little side note that you may not know is that at one point the American bison almost went extinct.
Oh.
Yeah. People hunted bison for their pelts, their meats, everything. Like their horns and whatnot. What they didn't do is limit how many bison people were hunting. This became such a problem that at one point there were only about a little over a dozen left in the plains.
I always think of the thing with like extinction. I'm like, did you check everywhere?
But yeah, people were like severely hunting down bison and it was becoming so dangerous. And quickly, like the U.S. government was like, this is a problem. So they became a protected
species.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they pretty much like set them like in Yellowstone so people couldn't do that. And that's where they started to get a little bit more serious about it. And the bison are pretty much like an ambassador for Yellowstone. Like when you think of like Yellowstone animals, you're thinking of the bison.
Right.
It's crazy. So this control the government lacked in preserving and just keeping tabs on like on the bison and whatnot. They're like, this is becoming a problem. We need to have something a little bit more strict. So in 1886, the U.S. Army would be brought in to take control. So they're literally like, you're not going to worry about any more wars. You're going to go to keep tabs on those civilians in that park over in the West.
Oh my God.
So I guess you could say that the Army was the OG Park Service. And their time at the park, the Army would survey the attractions to make sure that the visitors were not vandalizing the properties. So regulations would be enforced and they would be there for a hot minute. So they would just like stand outside the attraction and just like stand there
Just stand there.
to make sure you weren't doing like shady shit.
Yeah.
So moving along in history, in 1891, so it was a hot minute, the Lake Hotel was built in the park. This is a huge hotel that many park guests would stay at and still do. It is a very big one. They have constantly updated it over the years and restored it.
Is it by a lake?
Yes. Yes.
Got it by the name.
Mm-hmm. So it is lavish, it is expensive, and very beautiful. It is right by the main lake in the park, and there is a lot to see in the areas. It is very expensive because I thought about us staying inside the property at first, but when I was looking at like hotel prices at any of the hotels that were open at the time, I was like,
Yeah.
it was like over $250 a night.
Oh my God.
I was like, no. So we got an Airbnb and just drove like an hour in.
Might as well.
So many restorations have been made to the hotel since its construction and has even been made as a National Historic Landmark, rightfully so. Because this hotel has been standing for like over 100 years.
Wow.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
So we also see in this time more of the Mammoth area near Gardiner, Montana, which is one of the entrances, or near one of the entrances, as it started to expand with the post office. So Mammoth was growing as well as some of the other areas of the park. So we have the northern section, Mammoth, being developed, the central section with the Lake Hotel, and then there was the south. That was the Old Faithful Inn. So they had like top section, middle section, and now they have the southern section. They got to hit all four or all three. So like its name, it is located right by Old Faithful. And I mean, it's like right there. It's so close.
Wow.
This inn is large, it's old, and it's expensive. As always. Any place staying at the park is expensive. Mm-hmm. In 1987, this inn would be made a National Historic Landmark. So pretty much everywhere you stay is a national landmark. So moving in from the places to stay in the park, let's get into the changes that came to the park in 1916. With the national park thing taken off, President Woodrow Wilson at this point wanted the park system to be its own thing. So he didn't want the army to focus on that anymore. I also think because the war was taking off in Europe, he was like, okay, we can't have the army focusing on this park. Even though it would be nice, we need them to focus on the war efforts. Yeah. So they kind of took them away and was like, okay, we're going to have this new system where these people are actually going to focus their entire job on the park. So this created the National Park Service Organic Act, and it was passed in Congress. So this pretty much brought in the rangers. With this act passing, it would appoint people to be the management of the park, also known as the Park Service Rangers. Their jobs were to conserve the scenery, natural and historic attractions, and the wildlife. So the first head of the National Park Service was Stephen Mather. He would develop concessions in the park where tourists would shop, eat, and sleep. He also constructed highways to be formed to enter into the park that would make it easier for people to access the park by car, because cars were becoming all the rage at this point. It is an important job to be a national park ranger, but unfortunately funding has been cut the last few years, hasn't helped with COVID. But the sad thing is that with the rangers being cut, park visitations have been at an all-time high, which is very terrifying because it makes sense to why so many stupid people are being found doing stupid things.
Yeah.
Because there's a lack of rangers, which is really sad.
That is sad.
So, I put in my notes in all caps, I put, do not approach the wildlife.
Yeah, don't. Leave them alone.
I cannot say this enough. Stop being fucking stupid in these parks.
Right?
So, I put before I lose my shit over the human race. Let's move on. I was getting real heated when I was writing these down.
Like, stay away from the wildlife.
I sound so sad. In the late 1920s, further expansion of the park's acreage was made to include more petrified trees and protection, and 7,000 more acres up north to protect more of the deer and elk wildlife in this area, because they love to hang out in that area. As soon as World War II came around, people did not have the funds to visit, or they were too focused on providing for the troops. That visitor percentage dropped tremendously. It went whoop, whoop. But as soon as the war ended, that percentage went skyrocketing again. Like, it hit an all-time high because people wanted stuff to do after the war. They were like happy that it was over with, that they can finally relax.
Yeah.
That they didn't have to worry about Hitler knocking on their door. I don't know. Now they had to worry about freaking communism.
Yep.
It never ends.
Nope.
So, the unfortunate circumstance of the shift of no visitors to over 1 million in a year, these 5 years, there was going to be problems with the infrastructure, with the architecture. Like, all of that stuff was going to have problems because they didn't have to worry about it for like 5 years.
Yeah.
So tourists complained that the facilities were in terrible condition, as well as the infrastructure. The park actually took this into serious consideration and started to update the old buildings and started to create new ones to make sure that everything was up to code, to make sure that people were enjoying their time at the park. It didn't look like they were slowing down anytime soon, so they were making pretty good money because you have to pay to get into a national park. I hope people know. Yeah. So the tragedy of the park came in 1988 when wildfires spread rampant through the park. There would be over 50 wildfires that would take over the park. The fires would destroy 793,880 acres of the park.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah.
The largest fire that consumed was the North Fork fire. This fire destroyed 410,000 acres. The cause of it? A cigarette. I fucking hate people. I hate people. So,
God.
Another crazy event that took place in the 90s was the reintroduction of the wolves to Yellowstone. So we come back around with the wolves. So in the late 1800s, it was decided that wolves were too much of a predator to the wildlife in the park. So it was decided that removing the animal from the park was the best decision, which I get. It's a very touchy subject to talk about, reintroduction of wolves. Like, I get it that because when you reintroduce wolves, if you do not keep proper tabs on them and they start doing their own thing, ranchers are going to be losing cattle, which is profit. They're going to be losing like sheep, and then the elk and deer population also start to
that makes sense,
go rampant. And a lot of times, like especially if one has like a tooth problem or whatever, they're just going to try and eat whatever they can get their hands on.
Yeah,
which can become very dangerous in that sense. I mean, there's been so many stories of bears and stuff where they have fucked up jaws because of something that happened, to the point where they are hunting people because we're easy to chew. So it happens.
Yeah.
So with this reintroduction in 1995/1996, 31 grave wolves were brought back into Yellowstone. And since they have been heavily monitored to make sure that they are not causing other problems with wildlife in the park. So they're always constantly making sure that like they're trying to find their migration patterns, making sure like their numbers are steady and that it's not getting too out of control, or like there's not a huge like inbreeding problem and stuff. Like there's a whole thing. It's crazy. So one of the most exciting events in Yellowstone history is that just last year they had their 150th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
2022.
That's cool.
Yeah. Good for them. Yay. So other relevant information about the park that you might know is that during 2020 with COVID, the park shut down for nearly 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big deal. When it finally opened, it was hitting records of visitors coming through because people didn't know what else to do.
People wanted to be outside.
Exactly. I mean, it was what people wanted to do. They wanted to find something.
Yeah.
And being outside, it was easy to be away from people doing that.
A lot of people are going on like car trips, like road trips where you wouldn't have to worry about like flying anywhere. You could kind of like keep your own space. Yeah.
Camping was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a lot of camping that summer too. So in 2021, the park reported that 4.9 million people had visited the park. This isn't even the most popular park.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, the Smoky Mountains are. In Tennessee. They're the most popular for some reason.
Oh.
There's really nothing special about that national park, but I mean, you have to go. So Yellowstone is not the most popular, but this was a huge milestone for them to hit 4.9 million. So the park holds so many wonders and stories that visiting is a must. There are well over 10,000 hydrothermal sites, including hot springs and geysers. Each has a story to tell. Let's also not forget that this park is massive. There are 4 main entrances. The northern is near Gardner, Montana. The west is near Cody, Wyoming. That's where we stayed. The east is Idaho. I have no idea what the town is. And the south is around like the Jackson Hole, Wyoming area. So the acreage of this land is, God, I didn't put a 2,221,766 acres.
Jesus.
Making it 3,472 square miles.
Oh my God.
It's massive. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you are burning miles on your car when you're traveling around this park. I definitely put some heavy numbers on mine. So this park is larger than a couple states in the country. Like Rhode Island, Delaware, New Hampshire, like all of them
Holy
combined.
shit.
This area is huge. So the most terrifying part of this park that most know but also don't is that beneath the park is a super volcano. This volcano would wipe out many of the states surrounding it completely, and others buried in ash. So ash would even reach across the world, like heavy ash. So if this thing explodes, we're done.
We're not too far away from it.
Yeah, no, we would be done. We'd be wiped out completely.
Perfect.
Yeah. Don't be scared.
I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm just going to be like, ah.
I mean, it's active technically.
Yeah.
It is a very active, and scientists are keeping their eye on it just to make sure that if it's going to blow, no one's in the area. So why do you think there are so many geysers and hot springs? This super volcano is not something to be messed with. And I don't know if there's science behind it. I don't know what the science is behind it because I'm not that type of person. But pretty much like all the volcano and stuff is like triggering the stuff and has created like all of these geysers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and it's like blowing out smoke and stuff. So it's crazy. It is crazy.
Makes sense why the hot springs are so hot.
Exactly. That's why
So don't go in them.
No, there's a super volcano underneath your feet. So. So every corner, there is something unique to see in the park. Hot springs are almost everywhere. They're literally on the side of the road, so do not approach. There is a hot thermal. The cool one, okay, I had to put this one in here because I thought it was so freaking cool when we saw it. This one, there's a hot thermal that is called the Dragon's Mouth Spring.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's pretty legit. So this thermal is in a mud volcano area of the park that is located near the back of the boardwalk area. So it's like kind of in a corner. It is the color of mud and is more of a chalky white color now when it used to be gray. No one knows why, like how this changed. It just did.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So they're still trying to figure it out. So the temperature is so hot that it will burn on touch. And I actually got burned a little bit because it
Touched it?
Well, no, it sloshes.
Oh my God.
It's literally sloshing. So some of it like spits out like a dragon.
like a dragon.
Yeah, and in the cave, there's like a cave where this water is sloshing, and there's like a sulfuric gas that spews out of it like a dragon's breath.
Holy shit.
It's legit.
Oh my god.
It also smells like rotten eggs because of the gas that is created. It smells so fucking bad, but it's so cool. Like, it literally looks like a dragon is like breathing out of this cave.
Is awesome.
It is so freaking cool. There are so many more attractions to this park that I can go on about, but this is for you to find out by visiting the park.
You convinced me.
Yes. So the last topic on the park that I want to discuss is the recent flood that enveloped the park. I don't know if you heard about this.
No.
So my heart broke when I watched all the news feed on this flood problem in the park last summer. On June 13th, 2022, Yellowstone received massive rainfall of 7.5 to 9.5 inches of rain, which is pretty significant. And at this same time, this caused a huge snow melt, which is not good because what does snow turn into when it melts? Water. Yeah, so you have this heavy snow melt from the winter on top of this 7.5 and 9.5 inches of rain.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to cause severe rainfall and flooding. So this rainfall flooded the roads and the rivers that run through the park. Like, these rivers could not handle them.
Oh, wow.
The flood would go on to destroy sections in the north entrance near the Mammoth Hot Springs by Gardner and the northeast entrance by Lamar Valley and Cook City. The Park Service took immediate precautions and went to work making sure people were being accounted for and to estimate the damage that would be done. Within the day, visitors in the northern sections would be evacuated, and within the next couple days, a plan was already set up to repair all the damages. I think they closed the park down for a couple days. So that sucks if you had a trip during that time.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were such severe damages. If you remember watching them, the roads were being demolished by the water completely. Like, they tore it up. Like, there was no longer a road.
Jeez.
Yeah, by the water. And there was even a house that was floating down the river. Yeah, it was like one of those like manufactured homes, but it literally like detached itself and was just floating down the river.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this was pretty severe. 9 days after the flood, the roads were starting to open back up in the southern loop. More of the road would open up through the summer. This project would cost about $60 million.
Oh my god.
Yeah. The park has since been up and running. If you are interested in visiting this amazing park, definitely do your research. In winter, the park is still open, but a lot of amenities are closed. Summers are always prime time to go, but be prepared for a lot more visitors. The best time I would say is late August into early September. Kids are back in school and the changing of leaves are always gorgeous. We went in early October and it was still beautiful, but of course, parts like the Devil's Tower, which is like a monument that I think Teddy Roosevelt did, created, it was closed. Like, that road was already closed. But be mindful of the wildlife and plant life, as it is unique, deserves conservation, and a lot of it is heavily protected, so don't get sued. Dogs are not really allowed in these parks. Like, they don't say that you can't bring them in, but I highly promote not to take dogs here just because of the thermals and the wildlife that is everywhere. It's just not safe to do it. I would never take my dogs to this park.
Yeah, no. Sounds risky.
It is.
My dog would go immediately into those hot springs.
Yeah. I mean, if your dog really loves water, like, I don't recommend it. So Yellowstone is unique and breathtaking, and I hope those of you listening will use this episode as inspiration to go visit the parks, but also keep them preserved.
Aw, cute.
Yellowstone.
That was very interesting.
Yeah. So that's the history of Yellowstone National Park.
Love it. Aw.
There's so much to it. Freaking love this park.
So that's what was on your water bottle?
Yeah.
Yellowstone.
It says protect national
I remembered
parks.
seeing the word national park.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone.
Yes.
I'm excited to hear your next one.
Yeah. Where can you find us?
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Historia the Podcast. You can also email us at historiathepodcast@gmail.com.
Woo!
Yeah.
We will catch you next week with another good part deux addendum.
All right. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.